would tell them to spend as much time as you can being a fly on the wall. So I think when you first get into a new business, it's easy as an outsider to go, God, that's so stupid. Why do they do it that way? And because you don't have the whole picture, you go in and think that a new way is better before you watch the people who are making it do their whole thing. So that would be my thing is that just go pay attention, be quiet, use your two ears and your one mouth, and watch, because some of the things that you at first glance think are stupid, you'll find that there's very good reason for why they're doing it that way.
Yeah. Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where we help startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. If you ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Margie Traxler. And Margie started her journey doing athletic, or having several different athletic achievements in high school. Then she went on to start pursuing a medical degree and got that. Worked as I think as a botanist, if I'm not mistaken, and a lab technician. And then she transitioned over into coaching. And then during that or around that period of time, had her daughter fall ill and started to look at and develop some alternative medicine or alternative products for her kid, and that led to the creation of the current business, and where they're focused on providing resources to those that are struggling, or resources and products for those that are struggling with some of the same health issues, as well as a lot of other issues. So, with that much as a introduction, welcome on the podcast, Margie.
Oh, thanks for having me, Devin. Thank you.
Excited to have you here and appreciate you taking some time to share your journey. So I just gave a quick overview to a much longer journey, but why don't we rewind and unpack that a little bit, and tell us a little bit about how your journey got started in high school, or enjoying various athletic activities.
So my journey, kind of like, athletics were always really important to me. When I was in the 2nd through the 4th grade, we moved around a lot. My father was an Episcopalian minister. I lived in this neighborhood where everybody on our cul-de-sac street had kids, and the neighbors across the street had 10 kids. And so everything was sports. I mean, we got up, back then you just kicked your kids out the door, and then they came back when the street lights came on, so we were outside all day long competing in everything. I was one of the younger ones in the neighborhood, but super competitive. Didn't realize it at the time. Then kind of went on, we moved again. Sports were always my entry to make friends and get in right away. So for me, I was a good athlete. So no matter where we landed, I was always one of the better athletes, if not the best athlete. And so, instantly you have a fit. And that was kind of my sports journey. I ended up playing college at Weber State, and the reason I chose Weber State at that time, it was a college, and so I was very much a science mindset, still am, and biology, botany were my loves, and because it was Division I could play Division I at the highest level. But yet, because it was a college, that meant that the professors were actually teaching the labs and stuff. And so it was a better education, and at the same price, free. So that's how I got started there. I, got into college. I started in the traditional medicine field, but then I realized that I believed differently. Like, I had seen and been interested since I was young, knowing that, our bodies are marvelous machines, and how we feed them and the things that we expose our bodies to is what predisposes us to health or sickness. And so that kind of got me diverging away from traditional medicine. And just kind of that sat on that back burner. I worked in a lab just getting out of college. I I coached too part-time, right after I got out of college. I was recruited to be a college coach. I did that for a couple years and then realized that I did not want to spend my adult life talking to 17-year-olds and their parents. So then and plus I had the call really of doing what I loved, which was science. So went to work in a lab, worked on, at the time, the beetle that was eating up the Northwest, for a year. Then from there ended up, going back into college coaching for a year again, was like, yeah, I don't think I want to do that. And got married. And then we went from ownership of one restaurant to 14 in our 22-year marriage. So that
Now, just filling that in, was that something as you got married? Was it your spouse, your husband, was the one that was into restaurants, or did you guys decide to?
he had one when we got married, and then I ended up, besides obviously having our kids, but then I ended up helping him with that. I was working outside the home at first, but then it was just much more expedient for us to, kind of co-join forces together there. And so went through that during my marriage. Now, during that same time period in 2004, my daughter was 6, and that's when one night she just bends over screaming, and we went to the emergency room. It wasn't her appendix, which is what I thought it was. And so after that, just shortly thereafter, flew across the country to the best natural and conventional doctor that I could find in the United States. And that was when he told me, well, when she eats wheat and sugar, it makes this toxic little punch and it's burning holes in her intestines. Now, today we would call that IBS. And but then what happened thereafter is we left the office. She was like heart crestfallen. I'm like, oh, no, it's no problem. We'll be gluten-free. We went, first off, tried to find something that looked palatable at gluten-free. Back in 2004 was a challenge, right? So we found something, we tried it, and it was horrendous. And so I said, hey, I'm a scientist. I'll put my education to use here. And so that's how I started creating foods, first for my own family. And then,
Now, maybe just to dive in really quick. So, I mean, or during this time you had the illness. Now, were you guys still running the restaurants? Were
yes,
you,
yes.
or coaching or doing the
No,
the
not
medical
coaching. Once
arena?
I got married, the coaching, well, and then I did coach my own kids, right? So I did a lot of the, a lot of it during the time when my kids were growing and I was doing the club teams, because I had a team for every one of my kids, with all their friends. And so I still was actively involved in a lot of the business stuff, but I did a lot of the backside. So I did the tax stuff. I did the payroll. I took care of all the bills and everything. I would go in on occasion, but for the most part, I was in on meetings and everything. And that was at a time also when we were in Oregon and they put gaming. So video poker came in. And so, at first we resisted that, but all the rents, as soon as the landlords know that's there, then the rents are going to be commensurate with that. So then we ended up getting into that. So, I was involved in, very actively involved in all those different facets of, running the business, doing all those things while basically I was busy. And well, at the same time, doing all the stuff for my own children. And then during the pandemic, or when the crash happened in 2009, I wanted my kids to have a good financial education, and they were growing up far differently than I grew up. And so I had them do payroll. So they each had 5 companies by then, and they had to do the payroll. They were 12, 10, and 7. And they, and I would sit with them and show them how it worked. And because I wanted them to understand that if you're an hourly employee, this is what happens. When you're an owner, this is what happens. And, in a good economy, in a booming economy, it's great to be an owner. In a struggling economy, it's great to be an hourly worker. And, and I wanted them to understand that, life is a give and take. But anyway, so once I got divorced, I thought I was going to go into something away from restaurants. So I thought, I'll go into rehabbing homes and stuff. But what I really discovered was that was not my passion. And at the same time, I had all these people calling me because by then I make these food, I had these mixes, everybody. And so I had all kinds of people calling me. I don't even know how they found me. They would, friend would tell a friend. I'd get phone calls from people all over the US and they're asking me to help them with their health. And so I went, and then I took my daughter on a tour when she was 17. So this was 2016, the end of 2016. We went to look at colleges, and after the first 2 visits, I turned to her and I said, "You can't live on campus. You'll starve to death."
Hmm.
And I went, you know what? There's a big problem out there, a population that is not being served. And I have these products that can serve that population. And so that started the switch of me then starting my own business. And so it was all those things that led to the start of Grain-Free Mamas.
So now, just rewind on things just a little bit. So you did the restaurants for a period of time with your husband. Sounds like you guys ended up going through a divorce.
Yeah.
Now, when you're coming out of that, what did typically, I don't know how the divorce played out, but typically you have to, you're finding a source of income or employment or that. Did you jump right into what you're doing today, or was there a transition period, or kind of how did you move over from doing the restaurant industry?
Yeah, I chose a buyout mode on the restaurant side of it, so because it was restaurant lounges. I wanted to get away from the litigious nature of, full on bar. And then I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do, but I also wanted to relocate. So it was better for me in my settlement to go out on my own. I gave myself 2 years, which was the time for my daughter to finish college, to really sit back, look at what do I love? What do I think sometimes we go through a crisis and we want to say it's all the other person's fault, instead of, I always told my kids that, I was 50% of the problem. Anytime we have conflict in life, we're always part of the problem. And if we don't look at what each portion of that is, we end up going out and repeating the same mistake again and again and again and again and again with greater consequences. And so I didn't want that. So I took 2 years. We moved to Florida. I did a lot of research, which led to further development of product. And at the time I was doing that just to make more product for, my own family. But, spent a lot of time, going down. I was in Florida from Oregon. I went all the way to Florida and went down in the Caribbean, did a lot of research on countries, cultures, incidents of disease, different things. And that actually really bolstered, how getting to where I am today, which is a natural food scientist. And so that's what I did before. I just took the time to go, okay, what do I want to do? What are my dreams? You go from, because I had been a scientist, dropped everything to work in the business, and so I was like, okay, what were my dreams? What do I want to do? And where do I want to go forward? And I just feel like it was a really healthy move on my part.
Gotcha. No, that makes good sense. Now, maybe just one other follow-up question to that, which is, if I remember right, and certainly not putting words in your mouth, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there's also one of your kids had a bit of health issues, or is that or part of what kind of directed you into, or some of the natural food, organic, and looking for some of the ways to address that? Was it the kid's illness, or just finding that that's what your natural interests were, or kind of combination of both, or help us fill that in just a little bit?
To go back a little further, when I was 10, I think I've always, I think that when we're born, there are aptitudes that we have, right? Things that we just get that go beyond education, right? And when you can key into those things, I think you have the most fulfilling life. Well, when I was 10, my grandpa got cancer, and my dad had told me later, he goes, do you remember what you said to me? And I'm like, well, I think I do. And he said, you said to me, Dad, someday we're going to figure out that cancer is caused by the things we're exposed to and the foods we eat. And that was when I was 10. And so that was a natural bent. Then when my daughter ended up, wheat and sugar were her biggest problem. So we started out gluten-free. I was like, okay, I'm determined to try and make better things. Then what I noticed was, so she's my youngest and I have 2 older than her. So then my middle son gets to puberty right after this, and his whole face breaks out, and I was like, hey, I really want to challenge you to try gluten-free, just because the school season got out. And I said, before we go to a skin doctor, because I'm not real big on chemicalization of pharmaceuticals unless they're necessary. And I think we go to pharmaceuticals before we ever try natural. And I just think that's a mistake. And so I tried to do, so he decided, okay, I'll do it for 3 weeks. And within 4 days, everything cleared up and his skin is impeccable to this day. And found out later, his biggest triggers were oat and sugar. Then my oldest son, he's really slender normally, so probably, anyway, he probably has more honestly has malabsorption more. And he because people think that only if you're overweight do you have a problem. That's not true. And so he ended up thinking he had an ulcer, and I said, I don't think you have an ulcer. Oh, I'm going to the hospital. And I said, okay, but that's going to be a waste of money. So then I took him, found out corn and sugar were the biggest contributors for him. And so what happened was I looked at it, and what I discovered was we went gluten-free, we were okay. We went gluten grain-free, we were better. We went gluten grain sugar-free, and it was like a whole new world. All of a sudden, the puffiness, and I went, oh my gosh, 95% of baked goods are made out of edible grass ingredients, the flours of grains, and then corn, rice, cane sugar, and all of those ingredients are edible grasses. And we are allergic to grass. So if we are allergic to grass when we smell it, what do you think happens when we eat it? And 10 to 30% of the world, it's like 2.5 billion people are allergic to seasonal grasses, and yet that's the only kind of baked goods. So that's what led me to develop because the baked goods were the underlying problem, not the protein, that's secondary, because the cows don't digest the grains any better than we do, right? They do grass, but not grains very well. And so the science behind that's what kind of led me to Grain-Free Mamas, was this realizing now we carry the gene for celiac and gluten sensitivity. Fast forward 20 years, nobody has celiac, nobody has gluten sensitivity because we changed our diet. We haven't developed those.
So now you started the business, said, okay, combination, you always had that interest from a younger age, had some of the, the kids that had various different, health related issues or sensitivities
it was food issues. It would have been a health issue if we wouldn't have changed, but it was a quick change for us.
Gotcha.
Back to health.
No, makes sense. And so now you did that. Now, what time period was it kind of when you started going down the business route?
Fall of 2017, I was still in Florida. I knew I wanted to start the business. I was at that time, starting in Florida was really what I thought to do, but my kids grew up in Vegas. Even though we lived in Oregon. The reason that we moved to Vegas is because they had really bad allergies in Oregon. And we moved to Vegas where there's not a lot growing and everybody was a lot healthier. So I thought about Florida, but because of the humidity, the bugs, all that kind of stuff, I decided that dry mix packaging would be better. So we moved back to Vegas, which my daughter wanted to move back to anyway, for college. And so moved back here. If officially March of 2018, I got started. Now, this is where it's kind of interesting because the products that I have, the things that I have are still way far ahead of the market. So it's a lot of education. It's a lot of work, but you hear people all the time going, I don't know why autoimmune is on the rise. And it's because of the type of foods that we're selling and most people are eating. And so it's a big project, but it's a passion of mine because I've seen, the health in our family is tremendous because we made those changes. So it's very possible. And
so you've got that going, so for several years now, kind of walk us through, how did you build a bit? In other words, hey, it's one thing to understand, hey, this is a issue that can affect a lot of people, your kids and others. It's a different set of skill sets or different mindset to build a business around that. So kind of walk us through, how did you start the business and get that going, and kind of where's it at today? How's that kind of evolved and iterated?
So here's where it's kind of interesting. It's been a journey, right? A journey that I'm still right in the middle of, right in the thick of. So started out, was able to I got my certification as a woman-owned business because it's a door opener, right? So then was able to be in these pitch contests. So out of that, ended up 9 of the top 10 retailers, grocery retailers, wanted to meet with me. So I met with all those different retailers, and they're like, oh my gosh, we're so interested in this product and that. Well, then I went to, okay, how do I go from the production that I'm at to supplying these big grocers? So that was the first big roadblock that I ran into. Then I'm like, okay, I could go through a contract packaging. Now this whole transpired over a couple of years, right? And so right about when 2019, 2020 was coming in, I won KeHE, which is a natural distributor, their trendsetter golden ticket. So going forward in there, but then the pandemic hit, and that has altered the cost of ingredients. It's also altered the cost of shipping, and it's basically slowed down a lot. If you go in the grocery store and you paid attention, a lot of the smaller brands have disappeared. I pulled back because I could. And I just went, you know what? There's going to be country shutdowns. I knew that was going to happen. There's going to be big supply chain issues, which haven't been totally resolved, right? And so I took that. During that time, I've just done e-commerce, right? So I've done e-commerce and sales that way. And then with a mind to go back into mainstream retail right away. But in order to go into mainstream retail, you have to have a certain amount of traction. Well, how do you get that when you're solo founded, right? I mean, I didn't come as a millionaire. And so what's happened is I've had to keep adjusting. People now are in America at an all-time high for distrust in groceries that are on the shelves. And so you have a lot more people frequenting farmers markets, doing all this kind of stuff. So I've sat back. One of the things that I learned as an athlete is, as a point guard, the best point guards are able to navigate obstacles to success, right? And so I have been able to be flexible. And so what I've done is I'm actually just right now taking a step back, and I have decided to open my own cafe. And I was on a trade mission with the US Department of Commerce because all the countries in the Middle East and Africa wanted to talk to me about the product. So the interest is out there. People want to get there, but it's cost prohibitive for me to make this food product, which already costs more than traditional baked goods, and send it overseas because of the taxes, because of the, so all these different things, I think for a lot of people, they would have gone, oh, it's impossible, don't do it. And I'm like, nope, there's a way to do it. I just have to maneuver obstacles to the way that works. And so I'm opening my own cafe, small packaging facility, so then I can supply for a region. From there, I'm going to do an airport kiosk and then satellite cafes. And then that model is what I'll take and plop in different countries and different regions and that's doable because it grows with the growth of the company. And so that's the model that I've transferred to, because it also, for investors, it mitigates the risk. So I can produce the product at a much better price point, which provides a better investment for investors. Right now it's angels that I'm talking with. There's several that are very interested. And so all these different things, it's like there's a lot of different ways to do business. And if you're not willing to be flexible, you're going to run into big roadblocks. For me, just challenges to maneuver.
Awesome. Well, sounds like it's been a great journey, and definitely excited to see how things continue to evolve, and certainly wish you the best on opening up the cafe. And so, well, we're already reaching towards the present day of the journey, and also the end of the podcast. It's a great time to transition to the two questions I always like to ask at the end of each episode. So we're going to jump to those now. So the first question I'd like to ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made? And what'd you learn from it?
My worst business with this particular, good grief, don't we all have a lot? But the worst business decision with this was when I got started, I felt like the cafe route was probably the best way to go, but I allowed myself to be talked out of it by distributors and, oh no, you can make it really big. But really, I should have sat back and said, there's a reason that, how do I mitigate that lack of traction to the funding to go from 0 to 1 million? And so my biggest mistake was to fall into that, oh, you can rise this faster and do that, when I should have just said, no, you cannot run before you walk. And I think a lot of small businesses, they get excited, just like I did in the hype, and they try to run before they can even crawl, instead of growing with the growth, and let it happen organically and naturally.
No, makes perfect sense. An easy mistake to make, but definitely a great one to learn from.
It was good. I mean, I'm glad it went that way. So, because it taught me a lot, and I won't do that in the future. So,
Awesome. Second question now that I like to ask is, so now if you're talking to somebody that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give them?
I would tell them to spend as much time as you can being a fly on the wall. So I think when you first get into a new business, it's easy as an outsider to go, God, that's so stupid. Why do they do it that way? And because you don't have the whole picture, you go in and think that a new way is better before you watch the people who are making it do their whole thing. So that would be my thing, is that just go, pay attention, be quiet, use your two ears and your one mouth, and watch, because some of the things that you at first glance think are stupid, you'll find that there's very good reason for why they're doing it that way.
Yeah. Now I'll push. The only pushback I give, sometimes there's a terrible reason. It's just, hey, we've been doing it forever, and that's the way we've been doing it. And so I think that being that fly on the wall, it gives you both the, hey, this is the motivation, the reason why these things make sense, and here are the other things that they're just doing just because that's the way it's always been done. And then you can start to differentiate what are the things that I should continue to do because it makes sense and it's a good way to approach it, and where are the opportunities for I can change these things and improve on it and make it better, versus those people that have been doing it just because that's the way that it's typically been done in the industry. But to your point, until you sit as a fly on the wall and listen and do that just to try and say, hey, the industry is backwards on everything, I'm going to shake it up, can be just as detrimental as it can be beneficial. So I think that's definitely a great piece of advice and a great takeaway.
Yeah, I agree with you on that point too. But the thing is, it's easier to make change when you've made friends first.
That is very true. So,
You can
well,
only make
awesome. Well, now as we are wrapping up towards the end of the podcast, if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
If they go to my website, which is www.grainfraymamas.com, there's a contact form there. I'm also on all social media channels, either under Grain Free Mamas or GF Mamas, GFMAMAS. And honestly, I've made the website my best price for products. So if you want the best price, you just come directly. It's free shipping. And part of that is again, as a little person, you definitely want to mitigate how much the third party people are taking big chunks out when you can.
Awesome. Well, I definitely encourage people to reach out, support a great business, make it or make a new connection, and if nothing else, make a new best friend. So, well, with that, thank you again for coming on the podcast. It's been fun. It's been a pleasure. Now, for all the other listeners that are out there, if you have your own journey to share and you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, we'd love to have you. So, just go to inventiveguest.com, apply to be on the show. Couple more things as listeners, make sure to click share, subscribe, leave us a review, helps us to reach even more startups and small businesses to help them along their journey to success. And along that note, if along your journey you ever need help with patents or trademarks or anything else with your startup or your small business, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we are always here to help. Well, thank you again, Margie, for coming on the podcast, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.